Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing fine tonight. We're going to discuss the Parashat Yitro, and tonight's class is sponsored by Aiki Rudy and Rosalie Rudy. Leilu Nishmat, Rosalie's mother, Mazal, Bat Esther, Ruach Adonai Tinechena Began Eden. Amen. Thank you very much to Aiki and Rosalie for sponsoring this class. Rabotai, I want to make 2 points in this parasha that are connected. You're going to see how we go from one to the next. But as a first point of discussion for this week's parasha, I would like to introduce by the last phrase of the parasha. First, we have to understand that Parashat Yitro is such an important parasha. Of course, for obvious reasons. This is when the Bnei Israel get the Torah. And towards the end of the parasha is when we talk about the 10 commandments. I don't like that word, 10 commandments, because it's really 10 devarim or 10 diberot, the 10 words, 10 sayings. It's not 10 commandments, because if not, it's very confusing. Is it 613 commandments or is it 10 commandments? It's really 613 commandments. And it was said in 10 diburim, 10 phrases that Hashem decided to share with humanity directly, and the rest through the Sefer Torah. But anyways, this is not our topic. You would expect that after the completion of the list of the 10 diberot, of the 10, I'm going to say the 10 commandments because that's the only way to say it, but Aseret HaDiberot, after the Aseret HaDiberot, there is a pasuk that seems to be completely out of sequence, in the wrong place. We talk about the service of the Kohanim in the Bet HaMikdash. And of course, one of the services of the Kohanim is when the Kohanim go up the ramp. They go up the ramp to go to the top of the Mizbeach, to the top of the altar. Now that ramp, the Pasuk tells us that it was a sleek ramp, and it was not steps. Mizbeach is high. You would expect that platform to be reachable by steps. Now you all know this halacha. It comes from the last pasuk of the parasha, which is a conclusion. It's as if we say, in conclusion to the 10 commandments, so then, velo ta'ale b'ma'alot al mizbechi, asher lo tigale ervatecha alav. Literally, you shall not ascend my mizbeach, my altar, on steps, the ma'alot, asher lo tigale ervatecha alav, so that your nakedness will not be uncovered on it. If there are steps and the Kohen makes steps, so then the nakedness of the Kohen could be exposed to the Mizbeach, and it will be disrespectful for the Mizbeach, for the Kedusha of the Mizbeach. The Yerushalmi, at the beginning of Masechet Berachot, just I think page 4, the Yerushalmi, the Mechilta also brings this, that now that the whole idea is not to have big steps so that the nakedness of the Kohen is not exposed, so now even on the ramp, the way to do it is a famous saying that says, Gudal litzad akev ve'atzed ased litzad gudal, which means that you have the heel to the toe and the toe to the heel. They make very small steps. That way, there's no way their nakedness is going to be exposed on the Mizbeach. And that's the psak of the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot, in Mitzvah Peh, Mitzvah 80, for example. The Rambam says, כדי שלא יפסיע פסיעה גסה, אבל ילך עקב בצד גודל. So he's borrowing that expression of the heel to the side of the toe. That way, we ensure that nakedness is not going to be exposed on the Mizbeach. This is the psak halacha from this pasuk. Now, it's very nice, but number one, what does this have to do with the context where we are? We just said we gave the Torah to the Bnei Israel, and now we say, okay, so in conclusion, the Kohen should not open his legs on top of the Mizbeach. Oh, that's not a great conclusion for the events that we discussed before, prior to that, which is the Aseret HaDiberot. What does one thing have to do with the other? It's, I think, a very strong question. There's another question also, and that is that in general, the Rambam at the end of Ilchot Temurah tells us a yesod in the Torah. In the whole Torah, whenever you see something that speaks only to a certain amount of people, for example, to the Kohanim, what does this have to do with me? Also, the Beit HaMikdash is not here anymore. So definitely this is a mitzvah that does not apply to us. So what do we learn from that? The Rambam says, I quote, Rov Dinei HaTorah, the majority of the halachot of the Torah, Ena mela etzot letaken hadeot. The advices, the guidance to teach letaken hadeot, to make people better. The deot, to get the ideologies straight. Liyasher kol ha'ma'asim, to straighten the actions of people. Okay? So I would look at the mitzvah like this and say, what can we learn from here? What is it that we learn from this halacha? There's got to be something that we learn from this halacha. If not, it wouldn't be mentioned. And again, it makes even the first question even stronger. And all the more so when it's a conclusion for the Aseret HaDiberot. What does this have to do with the way I accomplish my mitzvot? It's got to be a connection between the two. And that's what I would like to discuss with you today as in a first step. So, in order to answer this, first of all, we're going to look at Rashi. I think Rashi is hinting to this because Rashi makes a kal vachomer, a logical argument. His logical argument is the following. Rashi says, at the end of the day, these mizbeach, or these stones, don't have any feelings, they don't see anything, and there's no disrespect to a stone. A stone is a stone, I mean, this kiddusha, but to see the nakedness of the person who's walking on top, whatever, it's not really something that seems to be so consequential. But the Torah said you got to be careful with that. It's not up to us to make up the halachot. The halacha is that you got to be careful with that. It's asur, and that's why there are no steps in order to reach the top of the mizbeach. Says Rashi, maybe this came to teach us something for generations. And how is that? Those stones that don't have da'at, they don't have chokhmah, to be careful with the disgrace that could be potentially exposed to them. Amra Torah, the Torah says, Lo tinhag bahem minhag bizanon. Don't be disgraceful with them. Don't be disrespectful to stones. And stones don't have feelings and don't see anything. Chaverecha, your friend, shu bedimut yotzrecha, who is in the image of God, makpid al bizyono, and he is sensitive and he is careful with his kavod. Alachat kama vekama. It's a logical argument to learn from this commandment for other things, and that would be for people. People are sensitive, you got to be careful with them. Beautiful. Thank you, Rashi. I think this is a very nice chat. We learn something for Dorot, for all generations. Got to be careful with people, with people's feelings. People are sensitive. Okay, fine. Now, this, I think, does not fulfill what the Rambam says. The Rambam says the halacha itself should be teaching you something. Here Rashi is saying the halacha is about the steps, the stones, etc. And from that, I'm learning in something else. From there, I'm learning into another area. The kavod of a person has nothing to do with this. It's a kal vachomer. It's logical that if the Torah is makpid on this area, the Torah is going to be makpid in another area. But beautiful. Thank you very much, Rashi. It's still not learning from the steps and from the ramp. I don't learn anything from that. I learn from something else, a kal vachomer from there. So I think the question still stands, and also still the first question stands, why is this halacha of the ramp of the Kohen not being made with steps taught as the conclusion of the Aseret HaDiberot? So I would like to share with you a principle that is important in general, but definitely in Avodat Hashem, in growth, in mitzvot, etc. And that is the following. In order to understand, I would like to first quote a Gemara. The famous Gemara in Masechet Chulin, page 110, I believe. Kufyud Aleph. The Gemara says the following. A famous Gemara. You know how long we wait between meat and dairy. So between meat and dairy, it comes from the Gemara said, Mar Ukba waited from Seudah to Seudah. The time it takes from one meal to the next meal. Okay? From one meal to the next, the Chachamim have a discussion on what it is, how long it is. The Rashi, the Rambam, Rabbeinu Yerucham, the Pri Chadash, the Rama, many shitot, Rabbeinu Tam. It varies from one meal to the next, an hour. Some Ashkenazim do 3 hours. The Pri Chadash says 4 hours. Usually, us Sephardim or Mahmim, we do 6 hours from one Seudah to the next Seudah. People used to eat the Seudah during the morning hours and the Seudah during the late afternoon hours. And that would be from one Seudah to the next 6 hours. So we wait 6 hours between the consumption of meat and the consumption of dairy. Very nice. The Gemara tells us that Mar Ukva discusses what his father used to do. He says, my father, when he ate meat, he would wait 24 hours, 24 hours before eating dairy. Oh, 24 hours before eating dairy? Imagine when you go to a restaurant and you order a steak, you got to think 15 times before. Because the next morning, you can't have your coffee with milk. No cappuccino the next morning. He would wait 24 hours until the next night to have his cappuccino. That's a big deal. And the question is the following. If Mar Ukva grew up in a house where his father waited 24 hours, wouldn't we expect Mar Ukva to wait 24 hours also? Don't we copy what our fathers do? Don't we do the minhag that we have? The father waited 24 hours. No, I'm not waiting 24 hours. I'm waiting from Seudah to Seudah. Why not? Now, clearly it was a chumrah. Because if it would be halakha, then definitely he would have done it. But the chumrah of the father, he didn't take it. And you know what the answer is? Because when you do a chumrah is not something that you just do. Chumrah is something you think about, and you have to have a certain level in order to do it. Or before you do a chumrah, make sure that you first do the halakha, make sure that you fulfill all the mitzvot. Then you worry about doing chumrot and being a better person, etc. And this is something we need to discuss here. I tell you why. When we talk here about the ramp going up the Mizbeach, whenever you talk about the ramp going up, it rings a bell by me. And that is going up the ramp of life. Going up means I'm getting better at something. I'm growing in my Avodat Hashem. I'm becoming a better person. That's just how it goes. And in life, we should go up. Nobody stays the same. Either we go up or we go down. We want to go up. Don't make big steps. Don't take big leaps. Sometimes a person is very inspired. He's very inspired and he wants to jump in and to make a big change. It sounds great on paper. It sounds great even orally. It's not practical. A person is used to a certain lifestyle. Try to change it slowly. לא תעלה במעלות על מזבחי, אשר לא תגלה ערוותך עליו. When a person makes very big steps of change in life, maybe sometimes they could have הצלחה, but normally the human being needs small steps, small changes. עקב לצד גודל. Put your feet next to one another and slowly go up the ramp so you become a steady Oved Hashem. So when you do a change, it's a change that stays. It's not a change that today I do good because I was very inspired. Next day I'm not inspired. I put everything away. That's how a lot of people do. Today I'm a good guy. Tomorrow, whatever. The day after we'll see. Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. That's the wrong Avodat Hashem. The right Avodat Hashem is do something steady, because if not, tigale ervatecha alav. Erva, the nakedness, is usually associated with shame, with failure. At Erom ve'eria, we say in the Haggadah, when somebody is empty, didn't have any mitzvot, didn't have any avodah, is erom. When a person is exposed in his failure, it's very difficult to digest. And here the Torah is saying the way to do Avodat Hashem is not to jump, even if your father was doing it better. Even Maruk Bai was a great Avodat Hashem. He said, that's not for me. This was a Chumrah. I'm not doing that. Slowly in Avodat Hashem. It's a slow growth that slowly gets you all the way up to the Kedesh of the Mizbeach. If not, it's very slippery. You could go backwards also. Asher tigale ervatecha. Don't make big steps. Make small, steady steps in Avodat Hashem. Things that you could do, and slowly but surely you're going to see how a person grows tremendously in Avodat Hashem. I'm going to share with you a story that is very, very, I think, very powerful. It's a simple story, but it's very powerful. The story with Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetsky. Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetsky, alav shalom, was the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Torah Vadat in New York. He was a giant in Torah, very smart man. He's the father of Rav Shmuel Kaminetsky. The story that they say about Rav Yaakov Kaminetsky, whose grandson graduated high school, and the grandfather gave him he said, I have a present for you. Oh, when you tell a kid that you have a present for them, they're very excited. But many times they're only excited about the news, but when they see the present, they're not super excited because that's not what they expected, especially these days. What do you give as a present to kids? Everything we give is underappreciated, but fine. At the time, Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetsky called his grandson into his office, said, I bought you a present, I want to give it to you. The grandson comes in, and he shows him the present. And what is the present? He gives him a plant. A plant? You give a plant to a 17 or 18-year-old boy? What is a boy of 17 or 18 going to do with a plant? So when the grandson, who was polite, said, thank you so much, Grandpa, but what is the significance of giving me a plant? I'm not very into the botanical world. And the grandfather said to him, I want to teach you something. I want you to take this plant and, every 2-3 days, you have to pour a little bit of water to give food to this plant. And look at this plant every single day. And think to yourself and look at the plant carefully and see, did the plant grow? You look at the plant and from one day to the next, you don't see growth. And even if you look 2 days later, you don't see growth. And then you see it the next day also and you still don't see growth. And if you check the plant every day, you're not going to see growth really ever. So, but do me a favor. Take a picture of the plant today and take a picture of the plant in 3 years. And then you compare the two pictures. He says, and then we'll talk again. I guarantee you, plant is growing. Plant is going to be very different in 3 years from now. You may not appreciate the growth of this plant. And by the way, if this plant doesn't grow every day a little bit, then in 3 years, it would be the same. Maybe bonsais don't grow. Bonsais are steady plants. He didn't buy him a bonsai. He bought him a regular plant. And this grandson took a picture the day he got the plant, and he took a picture 3 years later. And sure enough, the plant was double the size. It was a big plant. But in an everyday thing, you wouldn't see a difference between the day before and the day after. And the Rosh Yeshiva, the holy Rabbi Yaakov Kaminetsky, taught him, the reason why I bought you a plant is for you to understand in Avodat Hashem and in the human change. The person grows and matures. Every day, you don't see any difference. You do not see a difference every day. No, you don't. But every day there is a difference. And although you don't feel it and you don't appreciate it, do not depreciate it. Because if you depreciate it and you disrespect it, then 3 years later, you would be the same size or even lower. In order to grow in 3 years, you have to grow every day a little bit. A little bit. No sudden growth. Slow growth. That's how you don't expose your failure, because that's the way the ma'alot al mizbeach, you go up my mizbeach. That was the advice of the holy Rosh Yeshiva to his grandson. And this is the Avodat Hashem. Now it makes sense. Why is it? It's true that there's a mitzvah, especially for the Kohanim. But what do we learn from that? For all of us, that's how you grow. That's how you advance. That's how you elevate yourself. You have a slow but steady growth. And that's the conclusion of the Aseret HaDibarot. When God gives the Torah, He says, hey, here, I have to tell you a little bit the manual how to do the Torah. Slow growth. Don't go cuckoo with the Chumrot and you jump onto the next one. Go slowly. Go slowly in your Avodat Hashem. That's the way you become a real Oved Hashem. Now, this is nice, but I would like to go deeper because there's a lot more that needs to be discussed. And for that, I'm going to go to the very beginning of the parasha. Now stay with me. I'm going to ask 3 questions. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian Choten Moshe. Yitro heard. What did he hear? Well, he heard everything that happened. The Gemara in Zvachim discusses that. Rashi brings it. He heard Yetziat Mitzrayim. We know by the way, he heard something else also. He heard about the Shiabud Mitzrayim, that they were slaves, because he was one of the 3 advisors of Paro, as you already know. So he knows the whole story. And then he heard about the Yetziat Mitzrayim. He heard about Amalek. Some say he heard about the Matan Torah. So the story of Yitro happened maybe after the Matan Torah. Whatever the case, he heard a couple of informations and he came close to religion. And he converted. This is the story of Yitro. But there's a famous question that is a little mysterious. Everyone heard the same thing. Everybody heard that. We sing it every day in the Al-Jashir Moshe. Shami'u amim yilgazun. Hil ahad yoshua parashet. Shami'u amim yilgazun. The nations heard and trembled. They knew about it. Everybody knew about this story. Is this something Yitro heard more than others? Apparently not. But he came and the others did not. What is it? What is the formula? What is the magical word? What is it that they heard others didn't hear? This is our first question. Our second question is somewhat different than our regular style. And that is, Rashi tells us, quoting a Midrash, that Yitro had 7 names. Now, a name could be a description of something. It doesn't mean that his father called him 7 names when he was born. You understand what I mean, right? A name means a description of a person. So sometimes it came later in life. For example, one of the names was Yeter. Was Yeter? Yeter because Rashi says, Sheiter parasha achat b'Torah, because he added a parasha in the Torah that was not supposed to be. He gave the advice to Moshe. Everybody knows the story. He gives the advice to Moshe to separate the Bedin in different sub-Batei Dinim, sub-courts, and the bigger ones would come to him. Fine. And then, one more name, Yitro. Well, Yitro clearly comes from the word Yeter, so addition, which is within the addition, they added another Vav. Rashi says, Mikeshenit Gayer, when he converted, when he came to the Klal Yisrael, Hosifu lo otahat, they added 1 letter, Al Shemo, on his name. So Yeter became Yitro. They added the Vav. Now, I'm just going to ask a question of an Amaretz, okay? Very simple question. Up until now, it's not the first time we're going to see someone's name being changed. The first one who had the name changed was Abraham. It was first Abraham, he became Abraham. So they added the letter He. Then you have Sarah. Sarah was changed from the He to the Yud. From the Yud to the He. Sarai. We see that the change usually goes to the He, right? Towards the He. There's another change later from Hosea to Yehoshua. Vayikra et Shemo Yehoshua. So he added the Yud. But the Vav, never heard of that addition. Now that I'm more comfortable with the Yud or a He, I'm just looking at the Pesukim and I see that usually we know about the He's and we know about the Yuds added clearly in the Torah. This one is not clearly stated in the Torah. It comes from the Chachamim. They explain that from Yeter he went into Yitro. So a Vav was added. Why the letter Vav? What is the particularity of this letter Vav? I'm going to build on this second question towards the third question on this topic, because the letter Vav has something very important And we may learn a big lesson. And whoever made it to this class, I'm telling you, it was worth it. In Yehoshua, in the famous story at the beginning of Yehoshua, the first conqueror of the city of the first city that they conquer. They go to a lady called Rahav, Azona, of course. And Rahav hides them, she helps them. You all know the story. And when they're about to leave, she knows they're coming back to destroy the city. She's asking them for help. And she says, promise me, Hishave'unali ba'Hashem, ki asiti imachem chesed. I did chesed to you. I hosted you. I was risking my life. They were in Yericho. They're not very big fans of yours, and I hid you in the wall. And please do me a favor, save my family when you come to destroy the city. Okay. Va'asitem gamatem in bet avi chesed. Not only with me, but also with my whole family, my father and his family. Untatem li ot emet, and give me ot emet. What's a ot emet? Ot is a sign, emet of truth. But you know that ot is also a letter. Otiyot is the letters. The Zohar understands this. She asked them for a letter. Not a letter made out of a stone, but a letter as a sign. Ot emet, that is truth. Says the Zohar. What letter is ot emet? I quote, da at vav. It's the letter vav. Now you ask yourself, you have two ways that you learn the Zohar. Either you learn the Zohar of, okay, fine. If they say it, it must be it. Fine. Okay, I believe it. But I think I would like to understand a little bit more the philosophy of the Zohar. What does it mean that the letter vav is the letter of Emet? Now, just to first prove that it is true, I'm going to bring a beautiful proof, Rabotai. And then we'll go a little deeper to understand why. There's a story in Shemuel Aleph, chapter 21, Pesukim, Yudbet, Yud Gimel, 12 to 16, 17. This is a story where David is being kidnapped by Achish, the king of Gat. You have to understand that there was a title called Melech, the king, but they called also Avimelech. Maybe your old father would call him Avimelech. So Achish, the king of Gat, also called Avimelech, kidnaps David. David, they're not sure. It's not like today. You Google David Melech and you see his face everywhere. So you compare with the person you have to make sure that's the guy you got. Well, they didn't have that technology back then. How do they know it's David? David kept on saying, I'm not David Melech. What are you talking about? Now, to make himself more credible, what did he do? He acted like a Mejnun. Mejnun case. He acted deranged, foolish. Now, obviously, a king like David Melech would not be foolish, so he betted on that to convince his kidnappers that he's not the true David. He said, I'm not David. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So that's what he does. And it says in the Pasuk, Vayeshno et ta'amo be'enehem. So he changed his good sense, you know. He concealed his good sense in their eyes. Vayomer Achish, when they bring him to Achish the king, what does he say? Tir'u ish mishtagea. Achish looks at him, he said, you brought me a meshuga? Why do you mean meshuga? He says a very interesting expression. I laugh because I love it. He looks at his people and he says, Chaser meshugayim ani? Are we missing meshugayim in our area here? It's full of Mishnun cases. You bring me one more Mishnun? Vayelech David Misham, in the Perek Chavbe, they throw him out. Okay, very nice story. His trick worked. He's liberated. He leaves and he goes back to his activity. By the way, now you may understand a little bit something. On Shabbat morning, we read a couple of Tehillim that we don't read during the week in the Tefillah. We have a couple of Tehillim extra. One of them, Tehillim 34, what is it? Le David, B'shannoto et ta'amo lifnei Avimelech, vayegareshehu vayelach. That Tehillim 34 is the praise that David is thanking Hashem for saving his life. What is it again? B'shanoto. Well, shanoto we said before. Vayishano et ta'amo. He changed his good sense. B'shanoto et ta'amo lifnei Avimelech. He's singing a praise to Hashem because when he changed his behavior to irrational in front of Avimelech, vayigaresheu vayelach, and he let him go. That's the Tehillim where he praises Hashem for that. That Tehillim, if you read every Shabbat, you're going to see it goes Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hevav. How is it? Abarecha et Adonai bechol et tamid tehila foteo befi. V'Adonai tithalel nafshi yishme'u anavim yismachu bet. Gaddelu la'Adonai tinu l'mashmu yachdav. Darashti et Adonai v'anin m'kol ha'avinan. Hibitu elav v'naharu v'neim al yachparu. Ze ani karav v'Adonai shamea. What happened to the Vav? No Vav. And after that, Chonem alach Adonai sivle haritzayim. Ta'amur u kitov Adonai shem v'shir. Yiru et Adonai ki yoshavtim achter elav. It goes all the way till Tav. The Vav is not there. The Mefarshim ask, what happened to the Vav? Well, the Vav in this story cannot be there. The Zohar says, Vav, da, at, Emet. The letter Vav is the ot of Emet. It cannot be in a story, it was Kulo Sheker. He had to do it. Nobody is criticizing that. That's how you save your skin. That's fine. But don't sing the Vav. Because the Vav was butchered. He was a regular guy, and he lied. I'm not David. Fine, just skip the Vav. That's why there's no Vav in this Tehillim. So now we know, even in Pshat, that Vav is the Emet. Well, the big question is, why is that? And again, you could read the Zohar and stop here and say, okay, that's it. This is it. Well, no, that's not enough. Rabotai, let me read to you Gemara in Masechet Zevachim. The Gemara in Zevachim, page Kuftet Zayin, says the following. Kishenitna Torah liYisrael, when the Torah was given to the Jews, Haya kolo holech misof ha'olam v'ad sof. The voice of God was heard in the four corners of the world. Again, that could mean everyone heard about it. That's what it means. Everybody heard that something extraordinary happened. Beautiful. V'kol malchei umot ha'olam hazatan be'ada. Again, all the nations of the world got very afraid. They got concerned. Somebody who got a code of laws. Bnei Israel had a revelation. Kabetzu kulan, where do they go to? The big pope of the time. Who is the big pope of the time? Bilam. Bilam is a Navi. Itkabetzu kulam etzel Bilam halasha. They'll go to Bilam, the prophet. V'amru lo, ma kol ha'hamon hazeh asher shamanu. What is this voice that we heard? Shema mabul bala olam. Maybe again God is going to destroy the world. So he comes to them, he says, no, Mabul is not happening again, God promised. They said, yo, maybe it's a Mabul Shel Mayim, Mabul Shel Esh is going to destroy the world with fire. He said, no, don't worry. He already promised he's not destroying the world. What is that voice that we heard? What is that story that we heard? Amar lahen, he said to them, Hemda tova yesh lo bebet genazav. God has a treasure for a very long time, way before he created the world, which means that he created the world based on these yesodot. The Torah was the yesod of the world. Taf kuf ayin dalet dorot, 974 generations prior to the world. And he built the world based on that. Now he gave this Torah to Bnei Israel. Patchu kulam ve'amru. The conclusion of the Gemara is everyone opened their mouth and said, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. May God bless his people in peace, which means, okay, fine, nothing to worry about. Let the Jews have their thing. Not our business. Beautiful. Yitro did not do that. Yitro did not do Hashem yevarech et amo v'shalom. It's a Jewish problem. Yitro was looking at the story and saying, God is trying to tell us something here. If we all heard the voice of God all over it, if we all heard about this big commotion, something is happening. I could shove it under the carpet and say, oh, it's a Jewish problem. I could say, you know what? Maybe I should pay attention to it. It's called connecting the dots. That you have a couple of informations that seem to be unrelated. But if you want to find out the truth, you pay attention to them and you look for a common denominator. You try to find is there a connection between all these stories. In Hebrew, the sole letter that does this job, which one is it? The Vav. It's called in Hebrew, in Dikduk, Vav HaChibur. The Vav that connects. Ani, Ata, me, you. If I want to connect me and you, what do I say? Ani ve'ata. Me and you. The Vav connects you with me. Yitro is not saying this story is an unrelated story with what happened. He says, I know about the slavery. I know about coming out of Egypt. I know about the plagues. I know about Ma'aseh Amalek. And now I hear about the Torah. Should I still say Hashem Yebarech et Amo B'Shalom? I'm not going to do that. It's enough. I'm going to connect everything. Vav HaChibur. What letter is added to his name? The Ot of Emet. You want to get to the truth of things? Don't disconnect things. Try to connect things. Vav is the letter of the Emet. It's not something just like that. It means that when you want to understand something, connect. In Avodat Hashem, of course, you're going to make small steps to grow, but connect things that happen throughout your life. The more you advance in life, the more there are things to be connected. Connect them. The Vav. We add the Vav to Yitro because Yitro is Emet. He's connecting the things, although they don't talk to him. The biggest failure in the intelligence community is when they don't connect the information they have. In 9/11, they had a lot of information. They knew about Al-Qaeda. They knew about Bin Laden in Mahshimo. They knew about a lot of things that the Mossad also taught them. We know now, it's documented. You know all they needed? The Vav HaChibur. You don't get to the Emet if you don't have the Vav. That's why the Vav is the letter of truth. And that's what Yitro did, and that's what others didn't do. That's why the letter that was added to Yitro, Yeter, better said, was the letter Vav. Because he did that, and that's how he reached the truth. I'll give you another example of a failure, the opposite now. Very soon is Purim. We're going to read the Megillat Esther. There's one passage in the Megillah that makes no sense. And you know what it is? The end. Perek Yud. Everybody is, that's it. You got the whole juice of the story. And then what do we say? Vayasem HaMelech Achashverosh mas al haaretz. Comes, I know everybody asked the question. They're like, what's going on here? It could have ended right before. No, wait, one more thing. Ahashverosh, he put a tax on the land. And this is how much he charged, etc. Ma ichpat li. Why do we have to say that in the Megillah? All the Mefarshim say it's to teach you something. You know, Ahashverosh, the whole balagan, this whole story, he went back to his old ways as if nothing happened. He did not learn anything from this story. Back to the mass, to the story, taxes, same guy. And it's hinted in his name. Please open a Megillat Esther. Don't trust me on anything. Check everything I tell you. But you could trust me because I checked. But check it. Perek Yud, open. How is Ahashverosh written? Normally Ahashverosh is Aleph, Het, Shin, Vav, Resh, Shin. Ahashverosh there is written Ahasharash without the Vav. It's missing which letter? The Vav. You know why? Now you know why. The Vav is the Emet. This guy did not connect anything with anything. I didn't connect. No Vav in his name. That's the Emet that you have. Ahasharash, not Ahashverosh, missing a Vav. And therefore, with this, we understand all the questions that we had. The question was, why was the Vav added? We know. Why was it the Vav? Because it's Ot Emet. Why did everyone hear and only Yitro came? Because he connected the dots and others did not. I want to end with a story from a great Gadol. His name was Rav Mordechai Gifter. Mordechai Gifter was the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz in Cleveland. And the truth of the matter is that he grew up in the United States. He grew up in the United States and he went to Europe to study Torah in 1930. Back then, you didn't take an airplane, you took a ship, and he didn't have money to be in first class. Remember in the Titanic that people fell down on top, the first class, and then you have second class and third class. I don't know if he was in second or third, but he was definitely not on first. And you know why. The first class, they were dancing and drinking and eating and having fun. And in the middle of the way, probably a week or two, between the United States and Europe, was a big storm. They interrupted the dancing and the singing. And everybody went to their cabins. They were scared. What's going to be? And he says the story, as soon as the storm regained its calm, everybody in the first class went back to drinking and singing. And he said, that I couldn't take it. I could have ended in the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, in the middle of nowhere, dead. How could you go back to singing and drinking like if nothing happened? You just can't do that. You have to take a moment and think and analyze. You don't want these things to pass through you without thinking. We analyze, we put dots, we connect them. That's what a Jew does. In Avodat Hashem, he grows slowly. He connects the slow pace that he's taking, the slow advances, and the adventures that he has. Connect everything. And that's the Avodat Hashem that we learn from here. Vayishma Yitro, Yitro heard. Everybody heard. He was a connector. And that's why the Vav HaChibur was added to his name, because it's the Vav of the Emet. We have a lot of things happening in our lives. Lately, it's a storm, and people should learn things. Because as I said, Bezat Hashem, soon we start to see the light at the other end of the tunnel. This vaccine, this thing, Bezat Hashem, it will work. I have no doubt it will work. However, the question is, are we going to go back to life before? Vayasem HaMelech Achashverosh Mas Ala Haaretz. Are we going back? Are we going to have a Vav removed from our name? Or are we going to be like Yitro Vayishma? He heard, and he learned, and he connected, and then we will be Zoche to have a Vav added to our name. The Vav of the truth, the Vav of connecting the dots. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.